Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Fury versus Usyk fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So of course this is a massive fight, so I don't really need to disclaim too much, but I'm going to introduce the fight as I always do and go through the regular little bits I always go through before I get into, of course, how big of a fight this is and everything like that. I mean, I've literally rolled my sleeves up because I know that this fight has a lot to unpack. So, starting off, Fury going into this fight 34-0-1 with 24 KOs, and Usyk is 21-0 with 14 KOs. This fight is for the IBF, IBO, WBA Super, WBC and WBO World Heavyweight titles. Fury's last fight was a win via split decision versus Ngannou, and Usyk's last fight was a win via KO in round 9 versus Dubois. Usyk is 37 and Fury is 35. Usyk is a southpaw. Usyk is 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, and Fury is 6'9" with an 85-inch reach. And to speak about what I've just been saying there, obviously this is for all the belts. This is the fight. It's the fight which has taken so long to be made, but it has now been made, and it's now the fight which we have been waiting for. And I mean, as soon as His Excellency came into the sport, it was just the main focus, the main priority was always, let's make this fight and let's finally get it to happen, finally have all the belts back on the line. The first time since, I believe, 1999, where Lewis fought Holyfield for it. I believe that was the last time that, well, I think there was less belts then, but that was the last time that it was the undisputed heavyweight championship. And so that's 25 years ago now. And so obviously we've been waiting for a very long time, and this fight has had a lot of build up. And there was a point when Fury retired after, I believe it was the Dillian White fight, where perhaps we were thinking that we wouldn't be able to see this fight. And obviously Usyk has come through in the 5 fights he's had in the heavyweight division and has built a name for himself and made himself known and beaten the best and really proven himself as just a great fighter. And to do it from cruiserweight to heavyweight, I believe there's only been Evander Holyfield that's ever done that, and so he really has put his name up there around with the best. And I do really hope that whoever loses this or anything, if Usyk is to go and lose this fight, that he doesn't get discredited as an opponent at all, because he is one of the best fighters around at the moment, pound for pound one of the best. In my opinion, pound for pound, top 5, I would say number 1 heavyweight at the moment. Obviously this fight is going to decide that, and just incredible fighters, both of them. And like I say, to have all the belts on the line finally, it's great to see. Obviously, like I say, there was all the build up about Fury wanting, well, he once said that he didn't want to fight for any money free, he would fight for free. Then he said he wanted like 500 million to fight, and I don't actually know the exact purses in which this fight both fighters are getting, but I'm sure it is a lot of money. And I mean, it is going to create a lot of revenue, and so it's not exactly, it's not a bad thing. I think it is just about time we got it over the line. And obviously, perhaps as an English fan I would have liked to see this fight in England and everything like that, but you can't ask for that much in my opinion. I feel like it was always destined to be out in Saudi, and it's not a problem. And hopefully if we ever do see Fury Joshua, that would be in England, and that Saudi money, it seemingly is stretching out into different countries now with, of course, the Crawford Madrimov fight going out into America, and the talks about a 5v5 in England. And so, it seems like His Excellency is not just showing off Saudi Arabia, he is wanting to splash his money out in other countries as well and really represent boxing all around the world, which is great to see. But like I say, they both are coming into this fight off more questionable performances. They definitely didn't come into this fight both, looking incredible or anything like that. I mean, just to go upon Fury's last fight, I'm going to go into it a bit more in a moment, but just to go upon Fury's last fight, obviously against Ngannou, it was his debut, and there was a lot of expectation for Fury to come through and to be able to win comfortably, and obviously he didn't. And Obviously, he made a lot harder work of it than what perhaps it needed to be, or perhaps it was just Ngannou was just a lot better than what he expected. We quite often see fighters overlooking, overestimating, coming in too confident, and Fury just came in too quick, got caught, managed to recover relatively well, and was boxing alright by the end, but there was a point going into even the 4th to 5th round where Fury was struggling and he wasn't really getting any success and he wasn't being able to find a way in, and his attacking game plan was just not working, and that showed vulnerabilities in his game. And obviously I believe, like everybody else believed, weight wise, seemingly yet again Fury struggling with weight and deciding when to pick to be able to, well, what weight to pick to go into a fight, and he just seemed underprepared, not bothered I suppose to an extent, and just not really taking Ngannou serious as a fighter. But as everybody's seen, it seems like he's a lot more dialed in for this one, and he is coming in possibly the best shape that we ever have seen him. Obviously, he has got an intriguing build at times, but it's always managed to work for him, and it seems like he's been more dialed in than ever. And even with the cut, it seems like that additional couple months has given him extra time to become even more in shape and everything like that. So I'm sure in that aspect he will be hopefully back to the Fury where it is going into the later rounds. He's still light on his feet, he's still moving really nicely, and he's still being able to box like it's an earlier round, and he's not, knackered, clinging on or anything like that. To be fair, he managed to be able to still look relatively fresh going into the later rounds with Ngannou, but I think that is just because he did slow the pace right down, and I don't feel like Usyk is going to box this fight at too much of a slow pace, so I feel like Fury is going to have to be very well conditioned to be able to manage it. Obviously, Usyk's last fight, obviously he won, he got a stoppage victory, it was an impressive victory, but the outlying thing of the body shot, which was ruled a low blow, I'm not really got too much of an opinion on if it was a low blow or not. It looked like it could have gone either way, to be completely honest, and when you see people being so outraged about it, I don't necessarily know if you can be too outraged about it, but it did show a perhaps weakness into the body, and there was another point in the fight in which Dubois seemed to hurt him to the body, and so that seems like there's a weakness there. And when there has been a fighter in Usyk which hasn't really showed too much weakness, and I mean he completely dismantled Joshua and made him look like the mentally weak one, and when you do that to then go on to fight something like Dubois, possibly he was overlooking him, Usyk, but for Dubois to expose perhaps a little bit of a weakness, maybe that shows that there is, he is human after all and everything like that. And so, every fighter, I don't believe any fighter is perfect. I feel like there is perhaps weaknesses in every fighter's game, and that's just human nature, and that's just, that's natural. But, they're both coming into this fight on the older side. I'm intrigued to see where the mindset is for whoever loses. I know it is, more than likely going to be a rematch right after this between the two of them again, but they are both on the older side. Obviously, Usyk came into the sport a little bit later. I mean, Fury was born and bred into fighting, but Usyk came into it when I believe he was around 15, 16, so that age has never really been too much of a problem for him so far, and obviously he's gone to the point where he is, and he is 37 years of age. But Fury's always been floating around with the questions of retiring and going away with his family and everything like that, and technically he has retired once, so I'm not necessarily sure where the mindset is if one of these do go and lose quite badly. Obviously I'm sure they're going to want the rematch, but I don't know. Also, if they win as well, Usyk's somebody who has always been very dialed in and been able to take big wins and been able to, praise it to his dad and everything like that. And Fury, I don't know. It's just obviously he got the big win back when he fought Klitschko, and then things went really bad for him. And obviously he showed a lot of mental toughness to be able to get through something like that. But I just feel like if he is going to become undisputed champion, hopefully he stays as dialed in as what he is now, and he doesn't go, fluctuate in weight, in which he always loves to do and things like that. Hopefully he does stay so locked in for the rematch, because obviously that rematch probably will be made come September, October time. So like I say, you do have to stay in shape really. You can't really just go out of shape. Obviously Usyk, smaller guy, southpaw, Fury. In the past when you've seen him struggle, it's been more often or not against smaller fighters, against southpaws. When you have heard Fury talk about some of his toughest opponents, he has referenced to the shorter fighters, the southpaws, and you look at the Wallin fight, you look at the Cunningham fight, and there is few fights there where he has shown weakness against them smaller fighters. And I don't know, I just don't know necessarily if he struggles to just be able to keep them down and keep them away and just be able to stop the flow of them and impose himself physically against the smaller fighters. But he's always been very good at him imposing himself, but perhaps just better against the more bigger physical fighters like he did against Wilder so well. But to speak about this card, 3 fights in which I want to speak about as well. All I probably could have done individual predictions for, but I'm going to go through them now, and we'll start off with Cabello versus Sanchez, in which I think Sanchez will win via TKO in round 9. They're both coming off impressive performances. It was probably, in my opinion, tough to be able to pick a winner out of these two, and I just believe Sanchez improves better throughout fights. I believe he is the one with the faster hands, the one with the better ability, the one with the perhaps better combinations. But Cabello's did look very impressive against Makhmudov, but I think he moves a bit better. He won't just be a stationary target like Makhmudov was for Cabello, and I believe, like I say, he will be able to get that going on to the later rounds stoppage. And I mean, 2 24-0 fighters going against each other heavyweight wise is, in my opinion, bound to end for a stoppage, and I believe, like I say, Sanchez TKO round 9. And to move on to the Optaia versus Briedis rematch for the vacant IBF World Cruiserweight title. Great fight. The first fight was an amazing fight. I mean, Briedis early on in that fight broke his nose, I believe, and then Optaia broke his jaw in 2 separate places from what I can remember, and just was an amazing fight. Optaia really had to show a lot to be able to get through that fight. Briedis really showed a lot of experience and a lot of class to be able to, obviously he didn't win, but put up a very valiant contest, and going into the later rounds he was perhaps dragging Optaia into a fight a bit and making him fight his fight. And since then Optaia has been on a brutal knockout streak, and I mean, to go through Thompson and to go through Zorro like he did, just destructive really, and he's really shown himself to be the best cruiserweight in the world right now. And I think this fight has always just been something that has played in the back of his mind, and now he's going to really be determined to come through and to brush away the cobwebs and the demons in which perhaps were there from the first fight. And I think he is going to do it. I think he will do it by unanimous decision. I think Optaia gave Briedis some really, really big shots in that last fight, and between the two of them, and he just managed to stay up and keep coming forwards. But I believe the inactivity is definitely not going to have helped Briedis, and I just think the actual skill of Optaia, the speed and the actual movement, the lateral movement of him is going to be too much, and Briedis, his reactions I believe will have slowed down from that first fight. And yeah, like I say, unanimous decision. Could be a clear unanimous decision in my opinion. And then the final fight in which I wanted to speak about, Cordina versus Kakase for the IBF and IBO World Super Featherweight titles. I had the pleasure of speaking to Kakase before this fight, and he seems very locked in, very dialed in. I'm sure Cordina's the same. Perhaps Cordina possibly might be overlooking Kakase a little bit as a fighter, but he definitely shouldn't be doing that. Kakase is a proven IBO World Champion and has been able to be amongst some great fighters and be able to get impressive victories, and he's somebody who has got a great jab. He will ping your head back often, and he's going to bring the fight. I think Cordina will win via split decision. I think it's going to be an incredibly close fight. Cordina in his last fight didn't look anything too impressive. He showed a lot of skill in which he does have, and a lot of ability in which he does have, but he did get drawn into a fight, and he did seem to struggle with an opponent actually being able to respect his power. And I believe Kakase will keep coming forwards, but I think just at times Kakase might become defensively a bit vulnerable and to drop his guard a bit and perhaps duck his head down a little bit. And with the shot variation and the shot selection and the IQ in which Cordina does offer, I believe he will, like I say, be able to get that split decision / unanimous decision victory. I don't normally like to do split decision, predictions, but I believe if any fight has the capabilities of it, I think this one definitely could be the making of it. But to go back to the main event and break both fighters down as fighters, there's a lot for me to talk about here, but I'm sure I'm missing even more things because of how just good both fighters are. But to mention what I'm going to mention, Fury, to start off with, as a fighter, he can fight at any range. I think he's very much proven he can fight at any range. Against Wilder, he was putting it on him in his face the entire time. Against Ngannou, going into the later rounds, he was just boxing at a range and keeping his range with his great jab and his great long shots. And so he has proven he can fight at any range. Perhaps Usyk at times may have looked a little bit weaker in that of a really close range and really struggling, well, not struggling, but really when he's up against it, against physical pressure. And Fury has the capabilities, and perhaps it might be in his game plan to put that physical pressure on him. Like I say, Fury is very good at imposing himself and tying you up, and that's kind of how he got out of the bad situation against Ngannou. He tied him up, didn't really allow too much room, and didn't really allow Ngannou to be able to put it back on him. And that's what he's always done, Fury, whenever he's been dropped. He did the same against Wilder as well. He tied him up straight away and didn't even really look too flustered after just taking such huge knockdowns against Wilder. And it's just that ability to be able to just have that, I don't even know what to call it, that kind of reset just in him, like to be able to take a knockdown just so well and then just be able to come back like nothing's happened. And I don't feel like there's hardly any fighters in which I've seen that they've been able to have that ability. But Fury, that's what makes Fury just so good. He has that warrior heart. He can get dropped, and he has been dropped, and Usyk could perhaps even drop him with just a really nicely timed shot, but he always has it in him to be able to dig deep and get through that. And so we'll have to wait and see if he can do it again. Obviously, it's not really a style in which I'm sure is beneficial to him, and it probably will catch up to him at some point, but we just kind of have to wait and see when that could be. To carry on speaking about him, he does have speed in hands. Hopefully that speed is back in him now. Like I say, now he's the smaller fighter. The speed seemed to drop a little bit against Ngannou with him, or like I mentioned, putting on weight and everything, but he does have that fast hands. He's very experienced at the heavyweight weight, and obviously he's a lot more experienced than Usyk at this weight, and he's been able to win at every single pretty much weight available to him in the heavyweight division, and I'm sure he is going to be coming in heavier than Usyk, and he's, like I say, used to being able to do that. He's light on his feet more often than not. He's most definitely got the more power. He's not individually known for crazy levels of power, but it would, in my opinion, be important to say that he does have the better power and will be perhaps putting it on him into the later rounds with the more power shots than that of Usyk. He controls the pace well. He's very good at making adjustments during the fight as well. That's something in which he does incredibly, just being able to make adjustments when things perhaps aren't working and then just be able to figure out a way around it. He's very durable, he's accurate, he's composed a lot of the time, he's got good timing, he can catch you with a lovely uppercut that he often throws when you are coming in. He uses his range very well, he's confident. I'd like to say he's confident. He looks a little bit different. His attitude has looked a little bit different coming into this one. We're so used to seeing a Fury who's just so confident and perhaps a little bit unorthodox in some of his strategies that he uses at times to get in an opponent's head. And you go back to the Klitschko times where he was really unorthodox in his strategies, and perhaps that was what made vulnerabilities in the mindset of Klitschko, because he personally was never used to somebody who was just so unorthodox and so unwilling to give respect. And somebody like Usyk, who offers a lot of respect and is known to just have respect for every opponent, Fury has seemed to, not have that respect. But since the Ngannou fight, I don't know, he has seemed a little bit quieter, and he's still got that charismatic confidence about him, but perhaps maybe he's coming into it with a lot more respect than what he's used to, and that could play a factor in it. Often we see fighters respect their opponents a bit too much, and then that can go against them, so we will have to wait and see if that plays a factor. He changes levels very well. He's very good at controlling his power in his combinations. He can throw them fast, in your face, close quarters combinations, or he can throw them longer powerful combinations at a distance, and so he has that variety in him. He feints very well. He'll draw you in with them feints. He can fight on the front foot or the back foot. He's proven that he has got that defensive rope-a-dope type style in his locker if he really needs to. He catches you off guard a lot of the times with his shots. He can be quite explosive as well. He punches over the guard nicely with that overhand shot that he has in him. He's very good at just in general mixing up attacks and just being able to, at times perhaps he can be a little bit predictable, but when he's at his best, he's mixing up attacks and really hard to counteract. But perhaps against Ngannou, he looked a little bit predictable. He knew that we was just going to see him into the later rounds just pumping out the jab and nothing else, and occasionally, I suppose, going for a clinch because he was not finding the range with his other shots, and so perhaps he's becoming a little bit more predictable. But for the most part, normally he's known for having just amazingly good mixing variation in his attacks. Perhaps negatives about him, like I say, he has struggled against southpaws at times, and Usyk's probably the most trickiest southpaw out there. He's coming into this fight, like I say, where is his confidence, where is his mindset at? It seems as though sometimes he hasn't ever really entertained the mindset of being able to suffer a defeat, but I've seen some of his interviews and it seems like he is coming to terms with the fact that a loss is possible, and I don't know if that's just a wiser version of him coming through or not, but I don't know. He can be made a little bit reluctant. I feel like that happened against Ngannou. He's obviously been fluctuating over his whole time in weight, and Usyk has always just been known to be so regimented in his weight and his just workouts, and always been seen to really never leave the gym. He's obviously been dropped in a lot of recent performances. His chin can be in the air at points, a low guard that he often does drop when perhaps things are getting a bit confident for him. His head movement a lot of the time is very good, but perhaps it is slowing down a little bit, and he can come in with it on the line, and his defensive movement is typically very good as well, but I think it is slowing a little bit. He can be drawn into a fight. He can stand straight on a bit at times. Perhaps he was too quick starting against Ngannou, so it'll be intriguing to see if he comes quick off the blocks or not in this one. Finding a way in, like I mentioned, against Ngannou, he struggled to find a way in. He can leave his head in a little bit too long, and something in which I've noticed quite often, quite often when he has been knocked down, it's been when he's been pushing away from an opponent, when he's thrown his combinations and then just kept a guard low and just tried to push his opponent away, and then he's just been very much countered from being able to doing that. And if he can't make that adjustment to not do that and to not see that, he hasn't really stopped doing that, even when he's had clear problems from doing that. I don't know, I feel like that's with Usyk's countering ability, he's going to definitely be able to capitalise upon that. And of course the eye injury as well, just to mention that obviously the cut was bad and it has opened up again, and Usyk perhaps could open it up again, and it is in a bad position, and if it does open up again, then that could be a really bad thing for Fury. To speak about Usyk more as a fighter, he's known for moving very, very well. He's just so technical in his movements, and he has such a high IQ. He's very sharp, and he's just known to be one of the best movers in the heavyweight division. It's just something in which we're not really used to seeing, because we are just used to your traditional, stand in your face brawl type heavyweights, and Usyk is just far from that. He's very accurate. He very much does outbox and outwill you, and when I say he's got that high IQ, he breaks you down mentally and physically, and very few fighters can do that, and only the best can do that, and he's proven that he can do that. Against Joshua, he more than did that. I think against Dubois, he did that. I mean, he wasn't even really landing going into when he actually stopped in the most powerful of shots, but it was just mentally Dubois had nothing left to give, and that's when he was just too much for him. He's got a great sense of balance. He sets his traps amazingly, just from even just simple things like going to the body to switch it up to the head. It's just setting traps very nicely, and I perhaps would say he sets his traps better than that of Fury. I would possibly say that. He's also got great changes of levels as well. He's very controlled in his work. He, like I mentioned, fights perhaps a little bit better in a mid-range, so perhaps if this fight does go into a more in-close type fight, then we'll have to wait and see how Usyk deals with that. With Fury does manage to impose him physically and be able to slow him down at all. He's got a very sneaky jab and utilises his jab amazingly, pretty much has everything set off the jab, and the way he manoeuvres his feet around to be able to always get his jab through is just very impressive. He's got a nice high guard, higher than that of Fury's, but perhaps a little bit too high if it's open to the body. He makes you question. He can fight on the front foot or the back foot very well as well. He draws you in for counters. He also moves you around the ring. Like I say, Fury is very physically imposing, and moves you around the ring in that way, but Usyk moves you around the ring just from his footwork alone and puts you in positions where you don't want to be just from that, and it's very, very impressive to see, and that's something that's very difficult to counteract, and so it's going to be interesting to see who is the one controlling the fight and the pace and the movement of it. He's confident. I believe he is definitely confident. He improves quite often throughout fights. He can weather storms. I mean, he weathered the storm when Dubois tried to put it on him in that last fight after getting the knockdown that wasn't ruled. Also against Chisora as well, he weathered a storm early on in that fight, and that was a fight in which he had to deal with a lot of physical pressure, but knew that his game plan was going to work, and he's very good at sticking to a game plan, and he knew that game plan was going to work for him, and he managed to weather the storm to be able to dominate into the later rounds. He finds his range very well. He is patient. He is very good at getting out of the corner when he is in defensive positions where perhaps he doesn't want to be. He's very good at getting out the corner. And Fury is somebody who's good at getting you up on the ropes. And I just believe Usyk perhaps might be able to escape them positions a bit better. And he works openings very well. The angles, the openings, just very impressive. And even what he was doing to be able to score that later knockdown against Dubois, like I say, it was just a really unique angle to find, to be able to find the shot, and it was just too much, like I mentioned, for Dubois. And negatives about him, of course, he's been hurt to the body. We've now seen that. Is that going to make him more compact in his guard? Is that going to make him perhaps more reluctant to throw? Is that going to make him drop his guard a little bit more? We'll have to wait and see. He has got that lesser power. Hopefully he isn't going to try and put on weight and then go for the knockout against Fury. That's something which I definitely don't want to see. I don't believe he will, but that is something which I definitely don't want to see. He's the much smaller guy. Obviously he's used to that now in heavyweight division, but Fury is a different beast in that aspect, and yeah, obviously Usyk is the much smaller guy. Physicality, like I say, he's not that physical himself and struggles against physicality at times. Perhaps in more recent fights, especially the one against Dubois, I saw that perhaps he was struggling to let more than 2 shots go at the same time. He was doing very good with the 2 shots and picking his shots out, but I just didn't feel like he was looking too comfortable when he was throwing multiple shots, and I don't know if that's the speed slowing down or if he was just a little bit uncomfortable, but it just seemed like, I don't know, there was something with his combinations that didn't look quite as normal from him, but normally his combinations are very, very impressive with his hand speed. He does kind of make it obvious when he is hurt, and perhaps that is a way to invite pressure, but he did make it very obvious he was hurt against Dubois. He can invite pressure. His movement can slow. It is very, very good still, but going into the later rounds it was slowing against Dubois. And if he can't find his rhythm, and if Fury doesn't allow him to find his rhythm, then he could struggle. And his rhythm, when he is in it, he's very, very difficult to get out of it, and is pretty much one of the best fighters, if not the best fighter in the world, when he is in his rhythm. But just if he can't find that rhythm, then it'll be intriguing to see how he manages to deal with that. Fury is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Usyk will win via unanimous decision. I'm going for the more bolder, I suppose, shout to an extent, but I don't feel like it should be the more bolder shout because they are two world-class level fighters, and it is just such an amazing fight, and there is just so much more that I could even talk about just from this fight. And yeah, like I say, Usyk, I'm going to go with unanimous decision. I think he is just going to be able to outwill him, and then into the later rounds be able to outbox him, and I think Fury might be questioning himself a little bit, and if there is any doubt in Fury's mind, Usyk is definitely going to expose that, and I don't believe Fury's going to be able to punish to the body as much as what people believe he will be able to do, and I don't think he's going to be able to keep a range as well as what he's going to be able people thought he might be able to do. It would be intriguing to see how the physicality he deals with at Usyk, but like I say, he has dealt with physical fighters before and has been able to get through that before. I don't believe he'll be able to get the stoppage because it is, seemingly virtually impossible to stop Fury at the moment, but I do believe Usyk will win via unanimous decision, and then just, like I mentioned, go on to fight Fury again. Of course, it's going to be intriguing to see if Fury does lose, how he deals with that mentally, and how his weight deals with that, and everything like that. Because, of course, he's never suffered a professional defeat, and hopefully, it doesn't have any kind of factor to play. But we'll have to wait and see if it does make Fury perhaps question things, or if it motivates him even more. But that is a thing for the future as well. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.